Hi, thanks for stopping by. I'm Joe Griffith from Digital Media Works, and this is Small Biz Talks. My guest this week is Patty Kay. Patty Kay is a business coach and educator specializing in ethical sales and marketing. Most of her clients are solo entrepreneurs who are in the early stages of their business or just starting out. Patty uses her extensive business experience and knowledge to help her clients answer tough questions like, how much do I charge? Where do I find clients? And how do I explain what it is that I do in a way that people get it? Along the way, she also provides support, encouragement, and accountability as her clients boldly realize their visions and do the sometimes scary work of putting themselves and their ideas into the world. So welcome, Patty. How are you?
Hello, Joe. I'm good. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming on. So in today's episode, let's talk about putting yourself out there and how to talk about your business in a way that makes sense and generates sales. So what are some of the common mistakes that people make?
Oh, wow. There's a whole long list of common mistakes. How about let's look at, say, a networking event, which is one of those opportunities that you have to meet people. In fact, it doesn't even have to be a networking event. It could be meeting somebody while you're out walking your dog or while you're grocery shopping. One of the things that you need to do as an entrepreneur, as a business person, is to be able to answer that question. So what do you do? And probably the biggest mistake people make with that question is that they take it literally and they actually answer it. So for example, a life coach, when asked, so what do you do? They might say something like, oh, well, I'm a life coach and I do coactive coaching and NLP, which stands for neuro-linguistic programming. And I meet with my clients every 2 weeks and we set goals. And they start telling them exactly what they do and how they do it. Which often gets met with kind of this deer in the headlights look, or people kind of walk away because it's not interesting to them. It's that person talking all about themselves, and when that happens, they get nervous and then they start rambling and talk even more, and it doesn't work for either party in the conversation.
I've had that same experience. I've gone to a networking event. I'll see someone that's interesting, and I think I would like to walk up and talk to that person a bit more, and I'll ask them what they do. And you're exactly right, is that they spend 5 minutes talking about what they do, and yet at the end of 5 minutes, I still have no idea what they do or who their ideal clients are or exactly how it is that they help people.
My favorite trick for answering the "so what do you do" question is, instead of giving that literal answer, so what do you do, just change the question inside your head before you answer it and pretend that the person asked you, so what do you do for your clients? And then when you answer from that perspective, then you're talking about what you can do for people. You're talking about how you can help, and you're talking about what's interesting to them. So for example, for our coach who was going on and on and on about neuro-linguistic programming, instead, she might say something like, well, I help my clients figure out what they really want from life, and then I help them make a plan and take action so that they can actually go out and get it. Now, all of a sudden, there's no coaching jargon in there. It becomes a little bit more clear about what they help people do, and that's what's interesting to people in that kind of a situation. Is what they really want to know is, how do you help people? What kind of, like you mentioned earlier about ideal clients, it's like, what kind of people do you work with? How would I know if you can help me, or if you can help my friend, or if you can help one of my colleagues?
Okay, and so this is something that you provide as a service yourself, as a consultant, as a coach. This is something that you'll teach your clients?
Yes, this is something that I work through with my clients all the time. My specialty in my business, the two things that clients come back to me all the time and say, wow, you really helped me with A, taking more action, getting stuff done, like moving faster. And the other is getting some real clarity on how to talk about what you do, which begins with answering that question, so what do you do? And then it continues on, what do you write in an advertisement? What do you write on your website? What would you write on a brochure? What would you write on a flyer flyer for an event. And how do you handle a conversation when somebody says, you know what, I'm interested in what you do, can we talk about that further, which becomes a sales conversation. So how do you handle that? How do you structure that conversation so it starts out, you know, with them being interested and ends up with them making a decision about whether or not they choose to work with you?
So what are some tips about that for people who are having sales conversations? What are some of those tips?
Well, the number one, I have a number of tips for there, but I would say that one thing, if you're having trouble with your sales conversations, and when I ask my clients, you know, we do an evaluation at the beginning of our work together to find out where they need help. And people tend to say about sales conversations, either they say, oh, no problem. If I can get somebody interested across the table from me, I'll get them signed up. No problem with the sales conversation. And then the other group says, oh, I hate having those sales conversations. I never know what to say. I feel uncomfortable. I don't want to ask for money. And they feel really awkward about it, which of course comes across when they talk to their client. And the easiest way to approach a sales conversation is to not talk a lot. A lot of people are under the mistaken impression that when they're having a sales conversation that they should be doing all the talking and telling them everything about their service and how it works and all of that. But the real key to an effective sales conversation is to ask a lot of questions, is to approach it as a problem solver, to figure out what's going on, like basically to ask people where it hurts and what's going on, and really it's a conversation to determine whether or not you can help them or not. So you ask them about their situation and what's going on and what they're struggling with and what they would like instead. And while they're telling you that information, you're deciding in your own head, can I help this person? What can I do for this person? Is this person a good fit for me? And sometimes that answer is no. Sometimes when you ask those questions, you find out what they're looking for. You realize that, you know what, this isn't really my client that's in front of me. This is somebody else's client. And then you can, you know, refer them out to a colleague or just let them know that it's not a good fit. However, if it is a good fit and you're building some good rapport with somebody and you understand what they're looking for and you have the skill set to help them with it, it feels a lot more natural to talk about what you do afterwards. So the trick is to find out what they're looking for first, see whether you can offer it, and then explain what you do after. It makes for a much smoother sales conversation. And in my work with my clients, I have a whole framework for a sales conversation where we go through it and we script out, not in that rigid kind of telemarketing kind of script, but just an overall agenda for a sales conversation about what points to cover, what to do at each section of that conversation, how to wrap it up, how to ask for the sale, how to talk about the price, all of that.
Okay, so that's great for the sales conversation. Now, can people take that and then expand on it, say, to words for literature or website content?
Not so much, actually. I use a three-part framework, really, which is the first stage is about getting attention, and that's your networking introduction. Those are your advertising. It's what people would typically think about as marketing. It's getting the word out there, letting people know that you exist. They had no idea you were there before. Now you let them know that you exist. And then the second part is providing information and education, which is what you're talking about right there with sales literature, with your website content. And that's where you talk about your, you know, what problems you solve, what solutions you offer, how your programs work, features and benefits. This is what I offer, and this is how it will help you. So you put all of that, those are the pieces that go in writing. And then when you get to the sales conversation part of it, if people have already had an opportunity to read what you've written, like if they've looked at your website and you have all of your services laid out and they already know what they're getting into, the sales conversation becomes really short. It's asking those questions to clarify that yes, you can help them. And there's not necessarily a whole lot of description that has to happen in that conversation because they've already seen it. And if they haven't already seen it, then you can go over it. But my recommendation is to provide that information before you actually get on a phone call with people.
Okay, so let's talk about the second part of this then, where you talked about the action. So how do you work with people and getting them towards taking action?
That can be a tricky one. What I find with my clients is they tend to fall into two camps once again. I've got the dedicated action people. They're always in motion. They're always doing stuff, which is great. They tend to be more successful. They're out there. They put themselves out there. They have no problem doing things. Sometimes I have a harder time kind of getting them nailed down to work on a networking introduction or to work on their website content. They're just so busy out there doing stuff, which is great. And then I've got my other people that are more the overthinkers, and they're the ones that need a little bit more prodding in terms of the action. And what helps with a lot of this is breaking through the things that stop people from taking action. One of them is, I don't know what to say. People will not go to a networking event because they don't want to introduce themselves because they don't know what to say and they feel stupid, so they don't go. Or they won't pick up the phone and call someone because they don't know what to say. They don't want to have that sales conversation. Somebody says, get in touch with me and let's talk, and they don't want to talk because they don't know the words. So sometimes we can look after the getting into action by helping with the words. Sometimes it's not knowing what to do. It's just that fear and overwhelm. They might be looking at something on what they think is a task list, but it's actually a project. It's got several stages to it. Like, for example, building a website isn't a task. It's a project. There's lots of miniature steps that go into it. And sometimes taking something big, breaking it down into bite-sized pieces is the way to start so that they know where to start. So that's another barrier to action, is just having something that you don't know where to get started. Another barrier to action is not knowing what to do, feeling completely overwhelmed. And if you spend any time getting marketing advice online, you'll think that you need to do 400 different things simultaneously, and if you miss this one, you're out of luck, and this is the new thing, and that other thing is dead. So it's choosing. Where are you going to focus? What's going to fit best for your business? So that's another thing that I help people with, is helping them choose what's the best way for them to market their business. And then finally, there's that accountability. As one of my clients said to me, she says, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'll do it. If I tell myself I'm going to do it, it gets put off till tomorrow.
I think a lot of us are like that.
It's very, very common. And when you look around at the role models in the entrepreneurial world, the gurus that we look up to, like you look at someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, he's like hustle, 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 work 24 hours a day, never sleeps, go, 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 action, action, action. And I believe that there's a certain segment of the population that's built that way. And that's what they do. But for a lot of us, and I'm in that camp too, we're just not wired that way. It's like, if I have an option between thinking about something and planning and researching and mulling it over, I'm more likely to want to do those things too. So I can really relate. I have a lot of empathy for my clients with that action taking, because I'm not one of those type A hustle, hustle, hustle people either. And sometimes it's more helpful to get help from somebody who's been in your shoes, and they don't just kind of brush it off and go, well, just take action because that's what I do.
So what are some tips, maybe 3 or 4 tips that would help people, even like me, for example, who are often finding ourselves not taking action? How can we get going?
Number one tip is to plan your week. To sit down, like either on a Sunday or early Monday morning, and identify what are the 3 things that I must get done this week. Don't make it overwhelming. Don't make a list of 27 things, but isolate what are the 3 most important priorities for the week and focus on those. And the other piece of advice comes right from Brian Tracy in a book called Eat That Frog, where he says, if there's something on your to-do list that's as unpalatable as eating a live toad, it doesn't get any more delicious looking the longer you stare at it. So eat it first, get the most onerous thing done first, and you'll get it out of the way. Everything else will seem easier, and you'll start off on some really good momentum for your week. And I often advise clients to take time on Monday for marketing, to make sure that the marketing happens every week. Block off a couple of hours to do your marketing for the week, and then for a lot of my clients, that's the frog. Cross that off, and then you can move on to the other parts of your work, including the client work, which we're often good at doing client work because there's accountability to somebody, there's somebody else waiting for it, and it's the work on our own businesses that we put off. So pick a couple of key tasks for the week, don't overwhelm yourself, and then make sure you get them done.
Great, those are great tips. Thanks for sharing those. So do you have anything else to share with us?
I would say that overall, building a successful business, bringing in clients, making a go of self-employment is one of those things that's not as complicated as people might have us believe. It really breaks down into taking simple actions and having very clear communication about what you do. Those two things are absolutely key. They're simple, they're not necessarily easy. It can take quite a while to really nail down a good description of what you do, to get some clarity on who those people are that are going to buy from you, to get comfortable with holding sales conversations, with introducing yourself at networking events, or putting yourself out there by blogging or creating videos. And really what it all boils down to is a lot of consistent actions over time. A lot of times success just comes down to being the last person standing. It's like you're planting seeds every day, and it may take time for it to pay off, but if you stay consistent and persistent, continue to take those actions, evaluate your results, get better at what you do, that's how it works.
Well, again, thank you for sharing that with us. So if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to find you, what's the best way to do that?
On my website, pattyk.com, pattyk.com.
And is there an email to go with that, Patty?
That would be patty@pattyk.com.
So patty@patty.com.
No, patty@pattyk.com.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure we got that right.
It's important.
It is important. So my signature question, being a bit of a wine connoisseur, do you have any wine recommendations? I know you did a wine tour in September up in the Okanagan. So did you get any good wine tips?
Well, my favorite wine tip is cold white in the summer and nice red in the winter.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
For the podcast with Patty K. So thanks again.
Thank you, Joe.